So welcome back everybody to this Sky Expo. It's an exclusive event brought to you by BPS and NXTGENbps. And it's now time to put the spotlight on how the changing live broadcast media landscape is looking and look at how tech is reshaping live broadcasting through the lens of sport. So we'll be discussing the impact of remote production, sustainability, a little bit on AI integration in sports broadcasting, also some camera technology innovations and so much more. And time permitting, you'll also have the opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the session. Now you can see here I've got three amazing panellists on stage with me, Jennie Blackmore, Toby, Jenn and Claire Wilkie, so thank you very much for joining us today. Jennie Blackmore is the head of production at Sky Sports, and Jennie, I know in that role you oversee the production of content for all sorts of sports, overseeing large-scale live productions, and I know you're passionate about sustainable broadcasting initiatives as well. So tell us a little bit more about your role for those that don't know you. I know you've got a few colleagues in the room, and also some exciting things that Sky Sports have been doing in the last few months.
Hello everyone, nice to see everyone. Yes, my role is predominantly production and operations, so around the logistics of how we deliver our outside broadcasts and our galleries and studios at Sky. We've got a huge, sort of a team, about 100 people, predominantly made up of production managers and production coordinators, as I said, looking after all the logistics. And we obviously have very close relationships with all our suppliers, our OB companies, camera manufacturers. And yes, it's been quite we always said actually 2025 was going to be our biggest year just because of the volume of sport that we have and new rights landing. I look after football mostly, so for us that's been the Premier League, so we're up from 128 games to approximately 215, could be more. We've also got an increase in volume of WSL games, and that actually also includes some streamed games which we hadn't done before. So that's been mainly what's been going on in
your
my
world. Yes, I know. I can imagine probably 18 months or 2 years of heavy planning just to make those plans come to fruition. And it's interesting that increase in Sky Sports and that 215 figure. The reason why it can't be exact is because of that European football and those extra games on the Sunday, the 2 p.m. slot, which my son being an Everton fan is, I think, delighted that he'll be able to see Everton on Sunday. So thank you personally from our family members. There are other football teams available, by the way. And Toby, lovely to have you here. I met Toby just on the eve of Formula E's London race. I was chairing a panel then, and I thought Toby would be a great addition to this panel. And I know you lead the operational management and service delivery for those broadcast partners who have the rights to Formula E, and got a huge amount of experience, worked on multiple World Cups, delivered add-on services for Premier League productions, worked on Snooker World Championships and a whole host of other broadcast activities as well. But interestingly, Formula E is really the most sustainable sport out there. The clue is in the title. So Toby, just again, bring to life your role. I know you've got a lot of input into say so on cameras and so much more, but just to explain that and what Formula E is doing at the moment, where is it at?
Yeah, you touched upon it there, but Formula E is the only sport currently that's regulated as net zero by the British Standards Institute, which we're very proud of. We've been net zero since day zero, and we're moving most of our production to a sustainable way. So my role helps with the remote production. We have an amazing facility that Gravity have built over at Westworks, which essentially allows the world feed to be produced from there and delivered to broadcasters from there, which obviously we'll talk about remote production a little bit later. My role essentially is to allow the facilitation of our host broadcast partners to make the best possible world feed they can. So that's helping them with access, helping them with logistics, helping them with operational management. But on top of that, I look after our in-house broadcast services team, delivering feeds, content, unilateral versions directly to our broadcast partners around the world. And then also the in-house management of our specialist camera systems as well, through procurement of specialist suppliers, moving away from helicopters to more sustainable specialist camera systems such as drones.
Yeah, and we'll pick up on that again later on actually, but great to have you here. Thank you very much, Toby, for coming along. And Claire Wilkie, who's had a very busy life, I think, with everything that you've been involved in, CEO and founder of Limitless, specialises in advanced remote production for live sport. But interestingly, you began your career with BBC events. But one of the things that you're very well known for is the Women's Premier League when it comes to rugby. And obviously off the back of an amazing win on Saturday, the eyeballs that you've been part and parcel of, the increase in people watching that sport, it can only go from strength to strength now.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Red Roses. That was just fantastic and such a breakthrough for the women's game. And boy, has it been coming, like, it's just fantastic. And we've seen the rise of the women's football with the WSL winning in 2022 and now again in the summer. And then for the Red Roses to also deliver has just been absolutely fantastic. So myself and my team are just really fired up for the next season.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's your panel, and thank you very much for all coming along. Let's start by looking at remote production, and we've already teased it out already. And remote production really has become one of the core focuses, hasn't it? That change in the broadcasting landscape, driving sustainability, operational flexibility across live sports broadcasting. And Toby, you've given us a clue already about Westworks, which is where that central remote production is, because Formula E is a global sport, isn't it? It's an international hub. So just bring to life, you know, how remote production works for you.
I realised that set me up to go first when I used it at the top. So our remote production hub is essentially where the whole complete produced programme is delivered from. So traditionally you may have had a large production gallery on site, and then all of the associated unilateral versions for localizations, whether that's English language, Portuguese language, and so on and so forth. Essentially what we do now is we cut anything that happens on track in a small production gallery there, which has the traditional vision mixing desk, the director, executive producer, etc., etc. So they'll cut anything that happens on track there as part of the racing action. And then every feed is sent back to Westworks. And we have a full gallery there where an executive director can then supplement that by adding shots into that broadcast. So to tell the story in a sort of better way, that might be a reaction of a crash from a garage camera, or deploying the drone to try and get closer to an overtake or a bit of racing action. So essentially it's sort of split as track cut production, and then there's the full world feed that's delivered from Westworks. That allows us to save on global travel for around 60 people. It can be more depending on the scale of production. And it also allows us to access feeds in a centralized way via the cloud, remotely and directly from Westworks itself.
And I suppose Westworks, you've got that consistent team, haven't you? Because it has to be an A1 product. So that's quite interesting as well. Of course, you've got people on the ground around the world as well, but having that core team that know the sport week in, week out, excels and makes it for a better audience viewing experience, doesn't it? And you mentioned about earlier on about helicopters are now being pushed aside for drones. And I think it was something along the lines, if I remember rightly, is it 65% of your aerial production is now drones. And in fact, we've got a slide of the drones that we can just show you, just in the backdrop here. Is that Monaco?
That is Monaco, yes.
Wow. So what's going on here?
So last season we set out on a project to obtain this British Standards Institute net zero pathway authentication to basically reduce our carbon footprint. And one of those ways we identified was in the specialist camera systems. So we were tasked with deploying drones at 5 events last season. Monaco, that's Jeddah, they're our only night race that you can see on screen. And essentially we found that it produced an incredible carbon saving. It's not without difficulty. drones can't offer full site-wide coverage like helicopters can in a way to tell the story, but they can offer other areas of access that helicopters can't. For example, we can get small FPV-style drones into garages to try and tell the story, the behind-the-scenes story of the teams. The drones go remotely into our media asset management system, so available instantly for broadcast partners as well to use as an edit resource. And obviously the carbon footprint is far reduced as well. So that is a significant benefit of our drone production in a remote environment.
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing along that footage as well. I think that really brought it to life nicely. And Jenny, just give us a scale of the amount of broadcasts that are now remote. And I suppose the reason was the pandemic. That was the reason why we're in the situation we are today. It probably speeded up things quicker than you thought.
Yeah, it sped up things. We were always looking at it, and we already had some remote production in place before it. But EFL, as an example, we had a roadmap to take that remote, and that got expedited by the pandemic. It's an interesting one, remote production with us, because we do it on so many different scales. So we have our large host broadcast OBs that use remote production units on the road, which then we have a number of PCRs back here that act as the hub, where our directors obviously cut the games or the matches. We have varying scales as well. We might be out doing live view productions which are coming back into a gallery, or it might be something like US Open tennis, where we've actually taken a large amount of our own kit as a flyaway kit. So it's quite, I was trying to look at the figures over the weekend. I think if we do 1,000 live TX days this year across all our sports, then nearly 50% of those are remote in different ways. So obviously, as Toby said, the impact of that is it's on people. It's on people's welfare as well, not travelling. So there's obviously the carbon emissions to consider of travelling people around the world and around the country, but it's also, for us as well, slightly a welfare piece of them not being away from home so much. So travel is obviously, from welfare and emissions point of view, a huge factor in that.
And I'd imagine those 215 plus games, remote production is going to factor heavily in that in order to deliver that increase in scale. Am I right in that assessment?
Yes, yeah. So we had, from going up from 128 to 215, the majority of those will be remote. We've had quite a number of workflows over the summer here, which a lot of my lovely colleagues are in the audience who are involved in those workflows. One of which was to build a new PCR back here at Sky to cope with the extra volume, and I think Sarah spoke about that earlier and was heavily involved in that as well. So yeah, a lot of workflows have gone into this increased volume. Part of that as well being our OB suppliers. We now have a split across the Premier League between NEP, who've been our long-term incumbent, and we now have Cloud-Based on board as well, who we've worked with on various other sports, including boxing and SPFL, but this is the first time we've worked with them on Premier League. And from that, they've built, both of them have built new sets of remote production trucks for us. And that procurement process as well was heavily focused on sustainability in building those remote production units.
And also Wilmslow as well, as you've got
Yes.
that facility as well. What does that add to your sort of portfolio?
Yeah, so we've increased the facility up at Wilmslow, which is our remote replay hub. That obviously doesn't just work on football, works on rugby league as well. And obviously with that being, we have remote replay rooms here, but with having it up in Manchester as well, helps to sort of service the freelance market up north as well. We're very conscious of the fact that we've got incredibly talented freelancers all over the country, and expecting them to come to Osterley every weekend isn't sustainable. So to help with the sort of growing the market up north for EVS operators, we obviously have Wilmslow, which helps with that.
So remote production, Claire, if I mention those two words to you, how has that impacted Limitless? I'd imagine remote production is at the core of everything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always think with remote production, there's different variants of remote production, as you both have discussed really well. And I think I should probably just bring it back to kind of our origin as a company. So we were approached with the question, how do you live stream for a full day off the top of a mountain in Italy? And we thought, well, that's an interesting one, and what an amazing challenge to get behind. It had not been done before. There was no infrastructure in this at the summit in the Dolomites in Italy, and there, you can't take a truck up there. You can't put in fibre there. You can't put in hundreds of meters of cabling or thousands of meters of cabling, as this was 8,000 feet up at altitude. So how do you go live from the top of a mountain? So we thought, well, rather than saying no, let's engineer it and figure out how we can do it. So we built a really compact module that we then flew in a cargo net up to the top, and it ran completely off battery power. And then we used LEO satellite to be able to get the signals back to our remote production hub. And we did everything back at base. So we removed the complexity from location and did the storytelling back at base, but it was a multi-camera production on the top of a mountain. And that went live for the North Face and Patagonia as a brand activation and a live commercial to Westfield shopping centres around the world. So we were then distributing to international takers, and no one believed it was live. And that was what was so exciting.
Yeah.
It's like, this is live. That drone, that is live. That signal is live. The comments were blowing up. And so that's our origin story. And we built everything we do is around that, with that resilience, with that vision and imagination, and then that engineering excellence. And that's what we call the Limitless way, which is a way of thinking and our remote production model.
And you've expanded your remote production facility in Woking, haven't you? So just briefly tell us about that. Yeah, absolutely. So for live sport that we do day in, day out as our bread and butter, we are going into another 4-season set of the Premiership Women's Rugby, where we will be doing the multilateral world feed and the unilateral domestic feed for TNT Sports and BBC, and then also 50% is on YouTube. So we've now got a 5-gallery remote production hub. We've just built another MCR and also multifunctional rooms, so we can have remote TMO, television match official for any non-rugby fans, and we're bringing everything off-site into our remote production hub. So let's turn our attention to sustainability now. And Jenny, you've already mentioned or alluded to that sustainability is embedded into procurement and production decisions. And it's really about setting the tone as head of production. And it's something we'll come back to in the sustainability panel later on as well. In that role as head of production, it's a very powerful position, is that you set that tone. And that's clearly happening at Sky. So how is that impacting all your decisions now?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think there was a real drive, obviously, as with all companies a few years ago, to have their sustainability plans in place. For us, it's very much BAU now. It is just embedded into our production decisions and our procurement decisions. I have a lovely colleague here from our contracts team who's very au fait with our RFP processes. And actually, all our suppliers come to us now with solutions, because it's not something we put out there and say, you must include this. They know that that's how we work, and they will come to us with innovative power solutions, technical solutions, and it's very much embedded in that process. And I think it's so important that it is, because it's very hard to work backwards on a lot of these initiatives. As we know, OB trucks, big old built units, that to try and work backwards, you can put in batteries and, all of those kind of solutions, but actually to work backwards is so much harder. So when, for example, we did the RFP for the Premier League, we wanted those suppliers to come to us with the solutions of building a truck from scratch, and whether that was a battery solution for the power. You may have seen that Cloudbase now have Volvo electric tractor units. which and Gravity have also, I think they've got a tender now with an electric tractor unit. And I think years ago we wouldn't have thought that for the load that they're pulling and the distance they're driving, that would even be possible. But all these things are evolving and changing. And to move it on from that, the only reason those suppliers can do those initiatives really is because of the relationships that we have with the governing bodies. Yeah. So as well as pushing our suppliers, we have to really heavily push our governing bodies on things like venue power, electric chargers in the car park. Because, for example, Cloudbase would have never been able to go down this route of an electric tractor unit if the infrastructure wasn't in place at the venues. And I will say that all of our governing bodies are incredibly on board with all our initiatives and really support us, really push the clubs to build it into part of their regulations for clubs and venues, so that it's not an ask, it's a must-have.
Yeah, so all the stakeholders working together on that, and the Premier League leading the way in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And then Claire, from your point of view, I suppose by moving that complexity off-site to your remote production hub, sustainability is at the core of everything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've everything that we do, we monitor everything that we do and the energy that we consume, both in our production space and then also on site. And we know that for a like a 12 camera typical OB, and then for a 12 camera OB that we're doing, we're saving 85% carbon. So, and that's because we've chosen to go down this way. We have built from the ground up. We didn't set out to build a truck. We came from streaming into broadcast, and so we came in with a different way of looking at things.
Fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes, yeah. And just to think of, well, if we were to design something from scratch, how would we do that now? And how can we do that in a way that is future-proof for the next however many years, and also gives the most freedom and flexibility? And for us, it was going down this route.
And Toby, Formula E, the sport is leading the industry. Again, it's remarkable the kind of innovations that Formula E is showing to the world and that will filter down to the consumers. So it's quite a different example to many other sporting environments where actually you're leading the industry. What are some of the key innovations that you think we, as consumers, will experience off the back of Formula E?
Yeah, there are lots of innovation within the sport, and I think a key example of that is this racetrack to road model that we have. We want whatever happens from a technical innovation on the racetrack in a competitive environment to filter down to the consumer. So there are a couple of examples around that in terms of electric vehicles. I think there are probably two, maybe not blockers, but skeptical perspectives that you might have from adopting an electric vehicle as a consumer at the moment. And one of those is around charging and how quickly your vehicle can recharge. Last season we deployed a system called Pit Boost, which essentially cars had to pull into a pit stop for a mandatory 30 seconds. They plugged in, and during that plug-in, the energy of the car is reboosted by just over 10%, I think. So that's showing that you can charge a battery super quickly, which is a little bit of a blocker at the moment, I think, for some people adopting an electric vehicle. The second one would probably be around battery range and how much mileage you can then get out of that. But in our sport, we have many great teams. Jaguar, Stellantis, Nissan have all reported that their consumer models have then directly felt the benefit of battery range by testing them in this highly technical sporting environment. Nissan, for example, I think for the Leaf model, stated that from when it started to now, the range and capacity of the battery has improved by 181%. And that's not solely attributed to Formula E, but the way that they have to test it and push the boundaries to remain at the apex of the competition, I think has certainly allowed them to do that.
Yeah, no, some exciting developments there as well. And you know, the consumers would like those innovations sooner rather than later. So it's great to hear some of that groundbreaking work that you're doing. Thinking about on-prem versus cloud for live production. And so people think, well, is it one or the other? Well, it can be both, can't it? Jenny's got a wry smile on her face. So yes, where are you at when it comes to on-prem versus cloud?
Well, Toby and I were having quite a laugh about this because we are predominantly production operations and we have incredible teams at Sky, most of which are here, including our director of studios and technology, and Richard, who are highly embedded in the decisions for those workflows. And I think from what I gauge from it, it really is a production by production decision. So it has to suit that production, and whether that's scalability or workflows, we really have to be quite practical about it. So obviously we do have galleries here with a huge amount of on-prem technology, and that's the way we've worked for years. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kev, it's not going to be a huge move for us.
He's shaking his head.
But we do. But I think the basis is, and Rich and I were talking about this earlier, we really do evaluate sport by sport, workflow by workflow on how we use cloud versus on-prem.
So how about Sky Sports Plus then, which you launched back in July 2024, and you're streaming a significant amount of live events. So where does that fit into this?
So yes, we do use cloud for that to handle the encoding and distribution onto the Sky Sports Plus platform. We launched last year in 2024, so it's been going for just over a year, and we've actually streamed over 5,000 events, which took me a bit by surprise actually, but mostly around football, a lot of tennis, some rugby league, but that really comes into play when we've got the concurrency of events. So for example, our really big Carabao Cup nights where we might have 30 plus games going on at the same time. Previously, you possibly could have watched those games on a club TV with a one camera coverage, but actually what we're now able to do with the Sky Sports Plus streaming platform is have greater camera coverage, all available in one place, very easy to switch around between games on the Sky Sports Plus platform. So it's creating, as well as all our linear offering, you're also creating such a range for people to watch. And if your team is a League Two team that you're hugely passionate about and you never would have got to watch them on your big TV at home, we're now creating that offering for customers, as well as, you know, all our linear offering as well.
But I suppose it's about scale, complexity, cost and latency. Those are the decisions that are driving.
Exactly. And we remain very practical about that. I was talking to our Sky Sports Plus team, and where are we with latency? And actually, it's a continuing conversation, but actually for us on that Sky Sports Plus platform, it's about reliability of our feeds and streams and quality above everything else. Let's get that right and make sure the quality of those games and the streams are good. And latency is obviously something that we continue to look at and talk about.
And Toby, from your perspective, how are you using cloud? What part of the sort of the supply chain?
Most of that is within our post-production workflow. We used to have, and it's actually more important now, you have this remote production model where you have centralized assets that are delivered from one space that broadcasters want to collect. That's what we've found anyway. Part of our adoption of cloud in that space was around ownership of content. So we now have a centralized cloud-based media asset management system, which we didn't before. That will allow remote users to collect feeds. It also allows some of our production partners to download content or access content as growing files very, very quickly, which previously wasn't the case. We were recording something on site, it would live on someone's hard drive, you didn't know where that hard drive was or if that person was going to be in. So now it's more for us around quick access of that content, and how you can then service the broadcaster with that as well. That's kind of where we've moved in the cloud space. But like as Jenny said, I'm not an expert on that subject, I'm afraid.
Treading carefully. Claire, you were nodding away then, so
Yes,
can you reveal all?
I think you did a really good job considering. Well done, well done. Yeah, I'll just speak very quickly on this because we've got some really exciting other things as well to talk about. But yeah, basically all of our management systems and monitoring is all in AWS. So when we've got our engineers on site, we've built in apps and things that are all based in AWS that they can quickly monitor and check in with our production hub. So for us, it's using cloud is a way of efficiency, flexibility, speed when we need to problem solve something for empowering all of our team. And then also whether we do production in the cloud, it's a scale thing for us, whether we think it's worth doing.
Moving on to AI integration in sports broadcasting, just have a quick look at that. And the sense I'm getting is it's drastically reduced turnaround times for highlights in sports broadcasting, as well as enhancing that audience engagement with personalised content delivery. Sounds good, doesn't it? That's kind of the theory of it. And just Claire, just something I read about was your generative AI slow motion tech that got me all excited. So
yes.
Yeah, can you share your experience of that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So who's heard of EVS Extra Motion in the room?
There's a few, there's about 4 or 5.
A couple of people. EVS is basically the amazing industry vendor that does a lot of replay, and we would use EVS in our remote production hub to do all of our replay operations in our facility, just for anyone who doesn't know what that is. However, the traditional way of doing super slow motion replay on like a Premier League game or sport is to have a specialist camera, either a Trimo or Bimo camera, which is very costly and is something that can be a bit cumbersome. However, what we're using now is Jenn AI, which EVS have built into their replay system, and we can use that across any camera on any game. So we can use it across the RF camera that might be running the touchline. We can use it on the ENG camera that will be capturing colour for the show. We can use it on the corner cameras 1 and 2. There is no limit as to where we can then use this in our replay operation. So in terms of like telling the story and being able to build packages quickly for the closer, and then also digital content, it's a real game changer. And normally you'd have to incorporate that into a truck if you were doing an on-prem model. If you are working in a remote production hub such as ours, where we have EVS back at our base, we're able to have one license for the entire building, which means that we can use this super slow tool across multiple productions of different sports at any one given time. So it's just, we have seen it improve and get better, and I think it's just fantastic innovation.
And Jenny, what are you doing in-house or maybe externally partnering with people on this?
Yeah, I mean, we have a whole AI team here at Sky that are looking across not just production and sports production, but just workflows as an entire business. From a production point of view, the main sort of call out that is we've partnered with a company called WSC, and they're producing our vertical highlights for Premier League and WSL. So it's an AI-driven platform that automates the entire video creation process. So it takes the same feed, the same live feed that we are sending out to our linear channels or streaming, and then they process it in the cloud to create these sort of 2-3 minute highlights reels, but in a vertical format.
And that's happening pretty spontaneously, is it?
Yes.
Wow.
It is. Yeah. So they get pushed to the Sky Sports app, where obviously fans can watch them in sort of near real time. And then hot off the press, because I did ask our IA about this, the next iteration of that is they're looking to sort of integration of stories and reels functionality within it, which should be coming towards the end of this year, which is a more personalised experience. So I believe, and obviously I don't know too much about it, but that is algorithm driven for obviously looking at what you have been watching and producing sort of reels and stories to sort of send to your personalised app.
Wow, watch this space then. So, and Toby, I know AI is not necessarily your remit, it sits under the tech team at Formula E. Is there anything about AI that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, we actually utilised EVS Extra Motion for some select events last year. And the way it gives you an extra cinematic layer of telling the story was something that was really well received from our broadcasters in terms of the deliverables. So that's a really good example, I think. It's a very impressive piece of technology. In terms of in the live environment as well, we also use a tool called Transcribble, which is an AI system for interpreting team radio. So it will basically detect who's speaking, run a transcript back to an edit suite or a PCR at Westworks, and then we still have a human element. A human will look through it for errors, spelling, etc., and then push the best ones onto the director who's looking at the world feed. So that's enhanced the storytelling. It's allowed the audience to get closer to what's happening in the car, what the driver's relationship with the engineer is like. And again, an exciting bit of technology that we hope to develop further next season. Yeah,
because it is all about the storytelling in the end, isn't it? That's what you're driven by. Ultra-low latency returns, a nice little topic there for you, Claire. And again, interestingly, in the Premier Women rugby season, I know Limitless launched a pioneering ultra-low latency return vision solution, which I think the audience here would be interested to find out more about.
Yeah. That's great, isn't it? It's quite a mouthful to say all of that in one go.
I know how to say it as well.
Essentially, so with the PWR, we're doing a 1+3 pitch-side presentation. So you've got all of your pundits, all of your presenters, your reporter, your commentators are doing their thing, but there's no truck on site. We're cutting everything off site. So how do you minimize that delay so they can do their job properly and efficiently? So at the start of the season one, when we were doing testings, well, before season one, we were like, how do we really get this delay down? Because pretty much the normal way would be to have a pres truck on site, but for the PWR, it's 8 camera plus pres. We want to keep things kind of within the way that we're doing it. So my engineers, I didn't build it. I am not an engineer, but I have an amazing team of people who are brilliant at solving these problems. And they've got the latency down to 100 milliseconds glass to glass. So for the commentator, they hardly notice a difference on their screen, on their monitor when they're commentating. So that's just fantastic. For Gabby Logan, who we did pres for the Red Roses at Twickenham, big Twickenham, she was like, where's the truck today? And I'm like, there is no truck today. But there might be. Does it feel like there is one? She's like, yeah, it feels like everything is here on site. This is weird, and this is the best mix I've had in my ears, which I then told her A2, and she was really delighted. But so for us, it's that familiarity piece of things feeling the same for production, and the people who are doing the storytelling, they've got to feel the same. And so behind the scenes might change quite, insignificant ways, but that should not impact the people who are there telling the story. And for me, that is the key driver of what we do.
So it helps with all sorts of things, doesn't it? Analyst feeds, Hawkeye,
head injury assessment. TMO, who's based at our hub, not on site, in a truck or a van, like all of that, it is the heart of a seamless production. And like consistency is everything with latency. Yeah. Inconsistency is just chaos. So we don't want to go there.
Now, hopefully you've been listening intently, but if you have fallen asleep, now is the time to wake up, because we're going to talk about camera technology innovations. There we go. We're going to get you going, and emerging ones as well. And again, without being an expert in this, but I get the sense it's all evolving towards smaller, lighter units, increased special effects, so improving the production value, and again, that viewer immersion. And collaboration, again, with manufacturers, to Sarah's point earlier, is that they want to know at an earlier stage, what do you need, what do you want from us, so that they can incorporate that into the technology, into the cameras that you're purchasing, and that we as viewers are getting the end result from a better viewing experience. And Toby, you've already talked about moving away from kits such as helicopters and using drone cameras. But I think the one thing I saw in London, I think if I'm right, was those small scale onboard cameras, because there was a car on display before the race started and we had our hands all over it. I was given a behind the scenes look. And I think we've got a slide for this as well, haven't we? For this small, the Formula E onboard cameras. So yeah, this is fabulous, isn't it?
So I think this will showcase the number of cameras we have. Essentially, each car has 10 onboard cameras on them, and they're, as you say, that drive for small, light, this is kind of at the forefront of that. These cameras are all sort of atom-sized. The similarity to sort of almost what you would have on the back of your phone in terms of a sensor and in terms of the size. But we have found that they bring the audience so much closer to it. Formula E's host broadcast coverage is, if you add all of these cameras, the 10 on every car, you're looking at over 200 cameras to cover the race.
Wow.
So there's 10 on each of these cars, and that's 20 across the grid at the moment. In addition to that, we have 24 host cameras, track cameras, but we race on street circuits predominantly. So to supplement this, sometimes a camera operator can't always get to a position because the track is tight or it's not very safe. So on top of these small cameras, we add some other small cameras called X cameras that are just rigged, locked off, and kept. So there's so many different angles that we can tell the story of the race. You can either take some of these feeds here, you can take the 24 traditional host cameras, or you can look at the 10 locked off X cameras as well. You may be thinking, how on earth does a director cope with all these sources and all these incoming
Let me ask that
feeds?
question, how on earth does a director?
Well, funny you should ask that. Basically, the onboard cameras, because there are so many, we have to subcut them. So they're all presented back to Westworks. There'll be our own sort of PCR, which has just onboard cameras. And then a production team there will look at the best ones and send those into the world feed, or offer them to the director into the world feed, which they can use as like part of an EVS replay, or part of the live coverage for the start of the race, for example. Another camera there, which you may see, camera 9, is the driver's eye camera.
Where is it on the screen?
The middle bottom, the one that you can see the driver's gloves and the steering wheel. If you can, that one there that's just underneath the halo. That essentially is a very small camera that's fixed into the driver's helmet. I believe Sky used similar system on F1 actually as well.
But it originated at Formula E, was that right? The technology?
It did, without making rivals on the panel, it did. We use the what's the RF, the 2 gigahertz RF network to transmit it back. So it's in the helmet, utilising the car's bandwidth, sent back to a pod on site, and then into this subcut RF gallery back at Westworks.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's amazing to see. But Spidercam, which is, I think, my 2 favourite words, or was it one word, you're using it as well, aren't you, for your Formula E coverage?
We have used it historically. We are transitioning to more drones, as I say, but we find that Spidercam and cable cams generally offer us such a great cinematic way of telling the story. There are some racetracks that we go to, such as the Forosol in Mexico, where we've had the Spidercam, and it offers not only amazing racing action, but because it's so dynamic, it can shift the attention from not only the race, but the amazing fan colour you get as well. So Spidercam and other cable cam systems are used as well on Formula E to help tell the story at select events.
Yeah, I think Berlin had it as well, didn't it, the Spidercam?
We had a CamCat system in Berlin. along the main start, and the speed of the CamCat system now is really great for not quite keeping up with how quick these cars are, because they are the fastest accelerating cars in the world, but it does offer you that great shot for things like pit boost or any overtaking on a straight.
And it's great, these innovations, but I suppose there is, on the other side, regulations that you need to consider as well, because on that steering wheel, there's going to be some sensitive data. Has that been an issue for you?
Yeah, that's a good point. In season 9, I think, when this technology was first launched, we actually had to launch it with a sort of censorship over the steering wheel, so that the data from the teams wasn't compromised. Now, that doesn't offer a great story, or audiences at home, that's the sort of thing that would poke you in the eye if you were watching it. Like, why is that censored? Why can't I see that? So we've had to work with both the FIA and various other regulatory bodies to remove that, so you're offering the best possible broadcast product, and other teams or other competitors aren't using it for a sporting advantage.
Thank you, Toby. And Jenny, from your point of view, what sort of innovations are coming through when it comes to camera technology?
Yeah, so our technology team predominantly have the conversations with our OB suppliers about what kit is being used. I think probably for us at the moment, Cinecams have been a sort of topic of conversation. We are obliged as one of our Premier League packages to supply Cinecams, so finding the right solution for us. We've been sort of back and forth with a few sort of manufacturers, but I think for us, and actually one of our Premier League directors is in the audience here, so you may disagree with me, is a little more around adaptability for it. I think you can get great shots from a static Cinecam of crowd or teams out, but we've been looking more to use it on a steady cam, that you can almost switch between having it as a live coverage camera and then using the depth of field to adapt, and then use it as teams out or goal celebration to have that really nice depth of field.
And is the Cine one got a shallower depth of field?
Yes, it has indeed. You've probably, I mean, quite a lot of sports are using, you know, shallow depth of field cameras now. You'll see it on quite a few. I think La Liga have used it for quite a while. So we've been looking at that a lot on Premier League. Formula One and golf are using FX9s and FX6s on a gimbal as their pres cameras to also give that slightly cinematic presentation feel. But then going back to it, I think Spider Cam is, I know it's not new, but it's absolutely something that we use on quite a lot of our sports, Premier League, Test match cricket. They use it at the Open Golf. I think, again, I'm speaking for directors here, but I think it's one of their sort of favourite cameras to use. So that's, and then obviously actually I was looking at the some of the PTZ cameras earlier, because we are, well actually the leagues are as well using them quite a lot more. The Premier League have now installed PTZ cameras in areas like tunnels and sort of less prominent areas like tunnels and press areas this season. And I think that is reflecting a bit of a trend towards sort of more automated camera usage. I don't think automated cameras, we have a lot of conversations about camera automation. I personally don't see it replacing people to cover a match or a game. I think you still need that skill, you still need that understanding of the game. But I think there's definitely, as supplementary cameras, absolutely on all of our sports, they can be used as supplementary cameras, sort of, you know, those sort of remote heads. But I personally, from the examples I've seen have been showcased to us, I don't think we will end up covering a Premier League football match with 27 automated cameras.
Yeah, you might be able to do it in a news studio, but it's a different environment.
Yeah, live sport still requires the skill of the operator themselves.
Got it. And the other thing, which I haven't had a chance to explore myself, even though I do have Sky Sports, is the ref cam.
Yes.
So this is new, isn't it?
Well, that's actually, again, that is actually a Premier League implemented camera. It's very interesting because there's a lot of restrictions around it at the moment. I think it's taken quite a lot for them to get it over the line. to have this. So, and again, Sam may be able to speak a little bit more. I think it's a great camera. It's just we have to tread a bit slowly with it. Yeah. Get the referees used to it, get the league used to it, and so that hopefully we can start to use it a little bit more just for that. But you just have to be very careful about capturing conversations, capturing anything that, you know, might be seen to be bringing the game into disrepute, that kind of thing. But it's a very exciting for them to actually get that on board on Premier League.
Yeah, on-field communications, because we're used to it, I suppose, with rugby, aren't we? The TMOs and stuff like that. But there's been that hesitancy, hasn't there? So I can see that. But I'm definitely going to check that out. But yeah, I suppose you've got to be, just shows you, doesn't it, sometimes the technical and legal challenges of new innovations. Yeah. Just conscious of time and everything. So let's spend the last part just thinking about, you know, streaming, internet-based delivery, and, you know, the way the world is going, that immersive, interactive nature of what the audience really wants. And the reason why I bring it up is that the trend towards internet-based television, there's predictions that by 2040, 95% of UK households will be able to watch television over the internet. So Jennie, what to you are the benefits of streaming? What do they really provide you when you move away from that linear-based style of broadcasting?
Well, I think it is definitely more flexible content delivery and also cost-effective coverage of events, as well as going back to that concurrency events, which wouldn't have normally been available. You know, we've only got a set amount of linear platforms, so even if we have the rights and have all these feeds coming in of all these games, not having anywhere to put them is obviously a challenge. So hence why, you know, we've been really pleased with the Sky Sports Plus offering. But again, cost-effective production of live sport. So for our WSL, the streamed games we're putting out are 4-camera coverage, which isn't something we would have looked at for our main sort of linear offering. But interestingly, the way that the fixtures are falling, we are ending up a lot of the weekends putting that 4-camera coverage on our linear channels. It wasn't something we planned to do, it's just the way it's worked. Actually, the quality of the feeds we're getting in are absolutely good enough for our live sort of linear channels. So actually it makes us an interesting sort of thought then about what more can you offer with smaller camera coverage on our bigger platforms as well as the streaming. And then another thing I go back to is obviously the concurrency. So the ability to show on one night 30 plus Carabao Cup games, which we just wouldn't have been able to do before across all our linear channels.
Yeah. And Toby, from your point of view, how do partnerships play their part in Formula E when it comes to streaming and being able to be a bit more innovative away from, you know, the linear broadcasts?
I think there's probably a couple of things. For us, we have linear is very important still. I must say that it's still crucial for reach and getting us to new audiences. But the streaming deals that we have are new and exciting. So we have a deal with Roku in the US to broadcast all of our live races. Having a streaming platform in the US is great for us because it frees us of some scheduling constraints that you might get on some of the other networks. And it allows us to create more bespoke content for that platform. We were the first sport to partner with Roku. So they were very thirsty for content very quickly. And it's allowed us to showcase that sort of storytelling ability to not just create a live product, but supplement it with a magazine show to review the action, deliver highlights in Spanish language for viewers in the US that may require that. So it's broadened that scope, I think. In terms of our digital output, we've seen sort of partnerships cut through what you would maybe associate with traditional old school motorsport partnerships. So for example, last year we hosted an event called Evo Sessions, which was held in Miami. It allowed teams to partner with a celebrity, and then that celebrity would content capture their journey in both training to become a racing driver for this event, and also the event itself. So one of those was the YouTuber who many of you probably would have heard of, called Mr. Beast. He produced lots of very short form content. So instead of our traditional 2.5 hour program for a race, he would produce segments of 20 seconds, 15 seconds, and they cut through to new audiences. I think there's 2 videos on our YouTube channel at the moment which we're in partnership with. One has something like 160 million views, the other has something like 90+ million views. So that sort of exposure is enormous for an upcoming sport like us. So there's the sort of streaming of the live product, and then how we can cut through with other digital partnerships as well, I think.
Yeah, Mr. Beast is known as Jimmy Donaldson. There we go. So just in case you want to know, Mr. Beast does have a real name as well. And then Claire, from your point of view, I suppose the beauty of moving to streaming is suddenly all those lovely features that you would use for Tier 1, now those Tier 2, Tier 3 sports can benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think obviously what we're doing across our clients is being able to bring elements of that Tier 1 storytelling to those governing bodies. So we work with a host of governing bodies in the UK, and PWR is one of those. But we've brought, super slow, AI clipping, just enhancing that storytelling. And for growing sports, digital is everything, because they have to build their fandom to then have a product to be able to sell to broadcast, or vice versa. So that's where, if we think about not just the tech, but the bigger picture of every governing body now needs an audience strategy, because we are in a fragmented media landscape, whether we like it or not. And it's looking at, okay, if we've got linear is the credibility piece and the lifelong fans and a demographic of people who watch the sport day in, day out, but where are the new fans that we can then bring into that linear world, and vice versa. So we need to be going to digital, needs to be complementing linear, and we need to be looking at what's the digital strategy around for that sport as a growing sport.
So it's getting more eyeballs on the sport and more fans coming in. And I watch the Open coverage on Sky, and as a result of that, I've booked to go to Birkdale next year. And you're seeing that in rugby, aren't you? I mean, some amazing stats coming out. I mean, was it over 80% increase in broadcast views for PWR?
Yeah, TNT Sports, they saw an 86% growth in linear views, which is fantastic. And then on social media, they reached over 120 million, I think, social accounts. So there's a fan base there, people are interested. Now, a view doesn't represent a fan. That's the start of the fan journey, is actually getting in front of them. But it shows that young people in their core demographic, which is 18 to 34, and I'm just outside of that, but I'm part of the people they want to engage. So speak to me on my platforms, speak to the young people where they are consuming their content, and then you start that fan journey. They fall in love with the sport, and then they watch it, and then they get down to match day, which is what it's all about.
And you must have examples of a sport which has got higher engagement on social media platforms that you wouldn't necessarily get through traditional broadcasting.
We certainly do, actually. A number of the audience here may be involved in Baller League. Very interesting concept of six-a-side football, indoor football, but all the team managers were celebrities. So whether they were ex-footballers like Alan Shearer or people like that, or whether they were actually big YouTubers who, and I'd love to remember some of the names of some of the YouTubers who had teams. Angry Ginge, that was one. Not something that, when we got this project, I think a few of us were a little bit like, oh, wow, okay, not quite sure how to work with this. But what we found was the linear views weren't great. The social and digital views were enormous. I think they had 220 million views of Baller League across the sort of 10 weeks. and most of that is, the viewership is under 25. So we've got quite an ageing population of viewership for Sky Sports, but so that was a really interesting sort of dipping our toe into the market of actually what is engaging much younger sports fans. And I think celebrities like Angry Ginge are bringing people into that sports arena.
And that's across all the platforms.
Yeah.
You know, the likes of Insta, TikTok, are they?
Yeah, I did get off our social team that it was 120 million on Instagram, 35 million on TikTok, 2.7 million on YouTube. So it was across various platforms. But yeah, like incredible viewing figures that we just wouldn't see on linear.
And as we start to bring this to a close, just a very quick piece on interactive and immersing viewing experiences, which we sort of touched on already. I get the sense that full personalisation isn't ready yet, so you can't select your camera angles, can you, at the moment?
Not at the moment. It's something that there's a lot of people talking about it, but yes, currently.
Okay, so not widespread, can't do it at the moment. But those interactive components, they do signal that trend, don't they, towards where possibly we're heading, that more tailored and immersive sports experience. And Jenny, from your point of view, I did see a slide sent in on multi-view.
Yes.
So that might be an opportunity, James, if you could show the multi-view slide here. So is this pointing in this direction then, a more immersive viewing?
Yeah, sorry, that's not very good quality, is it, that slide I've got up there?
We'll let you off.
Apologies for that. It doesn't look so good on the big screen. No, I think this is incredibly exciting. We've done 2 weekends of it on WSL, and we will be doing it this Sunday on Premier League. So basically where we do have the concurrent games. We toyed about with a few formats for this, whether it would be that what we have here, which we settled on, which was the one main match with 3 down the side. And effectively, you can see in the left-hand side there, the director there is using GVAMP with a ROS dashboard to select the games. There's one set of commentators, so the one set of commentators will then obviously take direction from the director to say, oh, you know, there's been a goal at Leicester, we're going to switch to that. And you can effectively switch those 3 boxes into the main box, depending on what's going on in the other games. So it's actually had a lot of really sort of positive reaction to it. And again, just another example of what can you do with all these concurrent kickoffs that we have? So whether that is on Sky Sports Plus or whether actually this is on an offering on a main channel for a fan who perhaps you can also equally watch these games on a linear channel if you think, I just want to watch Everton. But actually for an offering for either a more casual fan or someone who's got a little bit of investment in each game, it's a really sort of exciting offering to be able to keep across lots of games at the same time.
I can imagine last day of the season, that's when you'll see numbers spiking using that, absolutely. And then, Toby, from your point of view, both traditional and digital methods, but where are you seeing a more immersive viewing experience for Formula E?
I think in our world feed, there are some elements where we're trying to bring the audience in to the story. One of those would be during the predictor for our qualifying. So the qualifying format in Formula E is slightly different to other motorsports. Drivers qualify for the head-to-head stage and they face off in a duel for whoever can do the quickest single lap to qualify, to progress through to the next stage. And what we do for that, I don't have an example of it, but there's a head-to-head graphic. And audiences will have the opportunity to scan a QR code and predict who they think will win the head-to-head. That will then feed in some data to that graphic. So say 60% think that Jake Dennis might win the head-to-head versus 40% of fans who think Nick de Vries might win the head-to-head. So that allows us to tell the story of heroes, villains, underdogs, favourites. It gives the commentators some more data to feed off in terms of what the fans are experiencing or feeling at home. So that's a really interesting way, I think, in terms of the live environment. In a presentation environment and a non-live environment, what we also have is a fixed multilateral camera at select venues, which goes back to your point around tailoring the production or making more localized content for broadcast partners. It essentially plugs into a live view encoder, and they can get it straight away if they pair to this system. And it means they don't have to send huge production crews to localize. They can send one reporter, use this camera, inject it over the top of the world feed as they see fit, and they've got their own tailor-made, language-specific presentation as well. So there's probably 2 examples from my side.
Yeah, some great examples there. And Claire, from the Limitless way, I mean, I know you were busy yesterday, was it, after the Rugby World Cup, filming the parade and everything else. Did we see any of this technology in action then?
No.
Oh, okay. We won't end on that note then.
I think it was Gravity were doing the world feed, and we were taking it for digital partners for the RFU and England Rugby. So no, not on that one. But what we have coming up is, especially in the YouTube games that we've got coming up, which is 50% of the PWR, that's the growth and play space. So we are focusing on building fandom there and focusing on speaking to these fans as how they engage content in that space. So there will be polls, it will be interactive match coverage, and it's gamifying the experience for them. And so we're producing per platform, right? So we're producing differently for TNT, BBC, and then YouTube is completely different. And we're looking at, okay, so how, with the Sidemen being a classic example of that, they didn't start off with a title sequence, they went straight pitch side with an amazing shot that came in over the stadium and right into they were influencers, and I don't actually know their names, I can't remember their names. Because they weren't your normal punditry, right? They weren't your normal presenters. And so they were speaking to the youth, essentially. And it was very informal. It was funny, it was different, but it was a different audience that they were speaking to. And so we're trying to learn and be responsive to those trends that are happening in order to build the sport.
Yeah, so watch this space, sounds very exciting.
Watch this space.
Just conscious of time, but I would like to throw out to the audience if there's any questions you'd like to ask our panel. We've got a couple of roving mics, so who would like to ask a question? I'm sure there's a question there somewhere in the audience. I don't like to rush people just in case someone's got a burning question. So anybody want to know any more? I know we didn't discuss 5G technology, which is billed as a game changer. That's for a whole separate panel discussion in many ways, and until I think 5G is stable across the country, then, but that will make a big difference. I mean, Claire, from your point of view, is that something you're excited about?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Right answer, that's good.
Yeah, massive. It will be a game changer.
So just want to double check, any questions? For completely satisfied everybody, obviously, unless I can't see anybody.
That's great.
So just a final thought, just to share with the audience of, where you see this space going. What do you think is possible in the future? What do you want to excite the audience with? Starting with you, Claire, where do you see the space going?
Oh my goodness.
Or is there something you want to highlight in particular? You think everything we've discussed, this is the most groundbreaking thing?
I mean, AI 100% is, I don't think people realise what's coming. It is a shift, like the Industrial Revolution was a shift. And we have to get on board with it and embrace it and use it for good. How can we use the technology for good purposes? Technology will be used for bad purposes and good purposes, but it's going to happen. People are doing it, whether we innovate with it or not. So how can we really harness it with what we're doing to build on our businesses and to be really looking at moving into the future? I'm a firm believer in that.
Toby?
AI is probably the key example, I think. Maybe how we regulate it as well is also going to be an interesting next step, particularly for in an operations space, I think. Also that trend towards localized, tailor-made content, maybe away from linear, with more of the sort of YouTubers that you've sort of referenced, or content creators to generate new eyeballs, I think, maybe would be what I would say, I think.
And Jenny, final words from you.
Oh, you stumped me for this one. I think probably the volume of sport that we can get out there now, and we always had incredibly high production values and standards, and we still do, but I think there's definitely a space for smaller coverage with less cameras of games that equally is just as good a level to put on stream, to put on, you know, accessible on the Sky Sports app. I think there's so much more we can show now where actually 2 to 4 camera coverage is acceptable, and you're just giving people much more content.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I hope you found that fascinating this afternoon. I certainly enjoyed your contributions. Thank you very much to Jennie Blackmore, Toby, Jenn and Claire Wilkie. Big round of applause, please. Thank you. Thank you.